and welcome to Billing Insights, your favorite podcast for medical billing. My name is Taylor,
And I'm Annetta.
and today you might notice that it looks a little bit different. That's because 200 gallons of water fell into our office due to unforeseen circumstances with our upstairs neighbors. So we are now recording from the comfort of our own home for the foreseeable future. Just so that you guys can still get all of the information that you desperately need while we're stuck with this situation. So, today we are going to be talking about the difference between contracting, credentialing, what is an NPI, and all of that good information that you need to be able to get in network with insurances, whether you are a provider or you're a physician staff that is helping get a provider in network. It's important to understand all of this terminology. So, first, let's start out with what is the difference, or, well, really just what is credentialing, the credentialing department, what do they do? So, Anita, take it away.
Credentialing is the process of obtaining, verifying, and assessing the qualifications of a practitioner, and whether they're able to provide care or the services in or for a healthcare organization. So the insurance or possibly a hospital or something like that is looking at, do they have a license? Do they have their DEA? Are they set, and do they have anything against them, like more than traffic tickets? But we recently had a provider in Nevada get asked about their traffic tickets from back when they were in college. So some states do look at that. And whether they are, I guess, qualified to be able to practice and do so, they're looking at possibly board certification. If you're a pain management provider, do you know what you're doing to do a pain management surgery? Those kinds of things. And
Yes.
then, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yes, these specialists verify that the professional training, certifications, and licensing of healthcare professionals, which needs to be renewed periodically or revalidated, are up to date and in compliance with state and federal regulations. So you might hear every 5 years. It might vary depending on the state, but I do know that there are several states where every 5 years you need to revalidate your Medicaid application.
Absolutely. And some along those same lines, there's what's called CAQH, where those have to be updated and revalidated every 90 days.
Yes, and now I am Googling what CAQH stands for because I always forget. It's like the Council of Affordable, what does
Quality
it stand for?
healthcare, I think.
Council for Affordable Quality Healthcare. So CAQH is a website that you can log into. You upload your CV or your resume. You upload your malpractice insurance, any of your degrees and licenses, and then different insurances are able to go on to CAQH, verify that you are a real provider, and they take all of the information that they need off of that website.
Right.
So it's very important to stay up to date with your CAQH. You can put your email in there and get notified every time that needs to be updated. I want to say it's every 90 days.
It is every 90 days.
And we have taken over credentialing for some providers where it hasn't been updated or revalidated or what have you in over a year. It tells you at the top how many days it's been since you last verified, and you want to make sure that you keep up to date with that.
It is something that we've seen insurances actually terminate a provider for not having their CAQH updated in a timely manner. So it's something really important to keep up with.
So next, let's get into what is an NPI, because that's very important in the credentialing process.
So an NPI is a 10-digit set of numbers, and it's issued, it's completely unique to every single provider. It does not change if you move from state to state. If you change specialties, they keep this same number throughout your entire career. Now, there's two different types of NPI numbers. The first that we just talked about is a type 1, and that's specific to an individual provider. There's also a type 2 NPI, and it's for a group. So when you're starting out as a new physician, if you are intending that you might possibly at someday have more than one provider that works with you, it's best to start with and get a group NPI as well, so that your entire credentialing is set up under the group. If you start out as an individual provider and get your credentialing under your individual NPI, and then you decide a couple years later, hey, I want to add a physical therapist or a nurse practitioner or even just a partner into my practice, it's a lot more in depth to have to then add a group and then attach another provider to that group than it is to just start off at the very beginning with the group, and then the process is a lot quicker adding individuals to that group at a later date.
Right. And there is a very helpful website, NPPES MPI Registry. And you can search for providers MPI using their name, their organization's name, or their group name. You can even search by state and address. And if you have their MPI, you can search by their MPI and then pull up the provider that way. It also lets you see their taxonomy. So that's pretty helpful information, and it'll pull up everybody with a similar name. Off to the side, you can see the taxonomy. So if you're searching and there's like 100 different John Smiths to look at, then you can see, is it John Smith in pain medicine, John Smith the physician assistant, the pharmacist, all of the different occupations there. So
Or
this
even,
is a really... Oh, I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say even John Smith in a different city than the one that you're based in. So it will break it down quite easily to be able to tell who is who.
Yeah, and I know there's something else helpful about MPPES. You have to have it updated for insurances, right? They need you to be in it.
And when you're setting up, for instance, and this will be on a different podcast, but when you're setting up your EFT, so I want my insurance to pay directly to my bank, in order to get that set up, they're going to call the phone number that's listed on NPPES. So if you don't have your current active phone number set up and they call to verify your information, they will terminate your insurance information and you won't be able to get set up with electronic fund transfer. So
and our posting supervisor and EDI EFT specialist know all about that.
Yes.
And maybe in a separate podcast, we can talk to you guys about the importance of having different departments and different people with different specialties.
I will mention we have a credentialing department, and they work very hard all day long on various providers doing the credentialing, because that's something that we offer for free to all of our providers. Because if you're in network and you're credentialed correctly, that increases, of course, the pay that you get. So it's a very important part of the process, and it's something that we do at no additional charge to all of our providers.
And speaking of keeping up with CAQH and Medicaid revalidations, that's another thing our credentialing department does. They also keep your Optum and Availity logins up to date and reattested as well.
All of which are important.
Yes, and some of those do affect payments as well, like Optum. That does cause issues, right? I'm not making that up.
Nope.
So providers want efficient credentialing. So we have sort of a process and a guideline on how to do it. Starting off with when you should start credentialing. About 120 days before you start seeing patients is the earliest, or the latest.
That may surprise you. But
you want to do it even sooner, but at minimum it should be 120 days.
One thing with some of our insurances, it can take 90 to 120 days. Medicare right now typically takes, if you apply electronically and go through PACOS to do it, it's typically taking about 2 weeks to do the application and get the approval. The problem, excuse me, with Medicare is that they used to backdate up to a year, all the way back to the date you saw your first patient. They've stopped doing that now, and they only backdate to the first of the month where you do their application. So that can really make a big difference. It's not something where you can just go into an office, start seeing patients, and start getting payments from insurances anymore. It doesn't work like that. And if you start seeing patients without being credentialed, you really could find yourself not getting reimbursed.
Right, you could end up working for free
Hmm.
for a long amount of time, which is not anything that anybody ever wants to do. Um, so how do you start this whole process? Or really, we haven't even gone over the difference between credentialing and contracting yet.
Hmm.
So, credentialing is filling out all of that necessary information, getting all of your information on file with an insurance. Once you're on file, then you can begin contracting with an insurance, which is the process of getting in network.
Right. And that's also where they would have you allowed to negotiate fees. Sometimes if you're a new provider, you really don't have much pull to be able to negotiate anything. But if you've been a provider for years and you've got detailed information about why you should get a raise or something like that, then you can do more negotiating.
Right. And it's important to be thorough when completing the
Hmm.
paperwork and make sure that you don't miss any information.
Or
Because
transpose
if,
a digit.
for example, TMHP, what do they say? They sent it back. What's that called? They happens to our credentialers all the time. Not all the time. That sounds
Deficiency?
bad, but a deficiency. Yes, not all the time, but it's something that
It does
over the
happen.
years, I've been working here for a very long time. So all
Hmm.
the time to me is like a few times over the span of a few years. But um they send you they say that there's a deficiency and they send it back for review, and then you have
Hmm.
to pick through it and figure out what the problem is. Some insurances will tell you, and I believe that Texas Medicaid is one of them, exactly where the issue is, like
Hmm.
on this page in this section. Some don't. They just say you have a deficiency and you have to figure
Right.
it out. So you want to be
So,
very thorough when filling out that paperwork.
and sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, the license expired in December of 2024 and you have a new license in January of 2025 because you have to get a new one every year, and they just don't have a copy of it yet. So simple little things. And if it's been in process for 60 days already, you wouldn't have had a new copy of the license in November when you started out this application. So simple little things can cause them to issue what they call a deficiency, but it's really not a deficiency. It's just that they need more information.
And so we kind of want to help you be able to do this. I guess you need to know the full process. So to get started with credentialing so that you can start contracting, um, if you don't already know where to go and what to do, one of the easiest ways to figure it out, and then you can keep your own spreadsheet for each insurance if that's something that you plan on doing for more providers in the future, is call the insurance provider services line,
Right.
choose the provider enrollment option, and speak with one of those provider enrollment specialists. They may direct you to a website. They may tell you that they have to email you some information and some forms over for you to fill out, but whatever process they want you to follow, it's different for each insurance.
Hmm.
Most insurances should have a provider enrollment option for you to speak to them and figure it out.
Once you start filling out all of the paperwork, it's really important once you submit it to continue with regular follow-up.
Yes, that
And
was another key point I was going to say, was
mhm.
be consistent with the follow-up.
And you should have a set time. So if your regular follow-up is every Friday at 2 o'clock, make sure that you continually do that, because some things fall through the cracks and you could be waiting months and months and months for a response from a provider rep who has now changed to a new provider rep that you didn't even know about. And that does happen.
Right, so you always want to be checking on the status of your applications, and you might even want to set like a little alarm or notification in your computer or on your phone or whatever device that it is that you will be using during work hours, and have that pop up as a reminder. I would also recommend having some weekly or monthly meetings with credentialing or about credentialing,
Hmm.
just so that, especially if you're doing it for different groups and clinics, but even if it's just for one provider, so that the provider knows, okay, now I can see
Hmm.
patients who have Medicare, now I can see patients who have United Healthcare, and kind of let them stay in the loop as well.
And it might be really helpful for you to get with your provider, or if you are the provider, to research what insurances you want to be in network. Find out what are the major payers in your area. You also probably have a lot of Medicare Advantage patients that, you have a choice of having on those panels if you want them added. So, for instance, you might have Blue Cross, and you have the option, if you want to see Blue Cross Medicaid as well as Blue Cross Medicare Advantage. Do you want to see those types of patients? And if so, make sure that you include that with your application so that you're filling out the appropriate paperwork for all three types of plans.
Right. And it's also important to know that you can escalate matters. If
Hmm.
your payer contact is not providing the answers that you need, you can always escalate it to a supervisor, because you don't want to be waiting around for somebody who isn't being responsive. That shouldn't
Right.
be a common occurrence. Most representatives that we've been in contact with have been great. But just know that that is an option that you can escalate if need be. And you can also delegate if you have your own department forming, or if you just, have a lot of stuff on your plate and you have somebody that can help you out. It's important to delegate things out because, again, with credentialing and contracting, you are dealing with many different insurances. If you're
Hmm.
dealing with a group or multiple groups, then you have many different providers with many different insurances. And like Anita said, things can fall through the cracks, especially if you're not following Billing Insight's tip of following up and checking on the status of your applications consistently
Regularly.
at set times.
So once you get through the credentialing process, again, the next step is the contracting, and we had said before that that's the part where you would possibly be able to negotiate rates. The next step is a welcome letter. And a welcome letter is just a single page document that it's exactly what it sounds like. They say, thank you for joining our network. It will give you the effective date, and the provider, of course, has had to sign that agreement, so you have a copy of that. And then they have to load the provider in the network. So if you get the letter and it says February 1st is your effective date, typically it takes about 30 days for them to load that information for the provider into their software. So just because February 1st has come and you start submitting claims, you could still get denials because it may have taken them another 10 days past the February 1st in order to get them loaded. So it's a good idea to contact the billing department at each of the insurances after that effective date to make sure that the provider is loaded before you start submitting claims and get denials.
Exactly. And along the same lines of what is an NPI, it's also going to be very important for you to know what an employer identification number is. And you may also see that used interchangeably with tax identification number. And that is just a unique 9-digit number that identifies your business with the IRS. You may also even see it as TIN instead of
Mm-hmm.
EIN, which, wait, did I already say that tax identification number? Well, it's labeled multiple different ways, or your federal tax ID. But either way, 9-digit number has you on file with the IRS, and that is going to be asked for in several different spots on
Mm-hmm.
all of these various applications and websites that we've been discussing.
Another number that you might see a lot, especially if you accept Medicaid patients, is a taxonomy code. That's a 10-digit character, so letters and numbers, that designates each provider's classification and specialization. So, for instance, a pediatrician or a nurse practitioner or a pain doctor would have a different 10-digit letter and number designation, and the group, a multi-specialty group, has a different designation as well. So those taxonomy codes have to go on a claim to the Medicaid payers to differentiate what type of provider it is who's seeing that patient that day.
Right, and you want to contact those different Medicaids, especially if you're getting denials for taxonomy, and see what boxes they want it in. Uh, Typically, it is the same few boxes, but not every Medicaid and not every state wants it the same way. So you're going to
Right.
want to reach out to those payers and verify what boxes they want taxonomies reported in.
So I think this kind of wraps up our first segment. We're actually having two different segments for credentialing because there's so much information to unpack. But starting on our next half, we're going to be talking about common credentialing paperwork.
Right, and that is a very thorough video that you will have uploaded. So, I hope that you have started to learn a little bit more about contracting and credentialing, and you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with it. I'm sure you have plenty of questions, which should be answered in the next video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as punch that notification bell so you can be notified each time that we upload a new video and you can stay up to date in this ever-changing industry. And we will see you going over common credentialing paperwork in the next video. Bye!
Bye.